Hello everyone, welcome back to Nick Ryder Tips. I've been doing a couple videos on beginner Texas Hold'em strategy, and I want to do a quick follow-up on odds because I made a big mistake in my original video that I'm going to put an annotation in which I said, well, it was about a pocket pair and we probably shouldn't get into it because it's way too embarrassing. But poker is a game of playing your odds correctly. Everyone in the poker game will get the same number of hands, the same number of times mathematically, right? You will have times where you get ace-ace and no one bets into you. You have other times where you get 5-3 and you fold it before the flop and 5-5-3 comes up on the flop, right? And you go, no, I had 5-5-3 while people are still in the hand. And no, you won't do that if you saw my last video. However, you will be kicking yourself going, oh, if only I'd gambled, I would have won. Well, yeah, but the more times you gamble, the more times you actually will lose because the math is in your favor to fold bad hands. So how do you play the math to your favor quickly in a game of poker? So here are some quick stats that are a little interesting. If you've got two cards in your hand and they're not paired already, your odds of getting a pair on the flop are 32%. That seems pretty high, but it's three cards, so any of your two cards hitting one of those three cards is 32%. Now, that also means that the chances of your opponent hitting one of those three cards is also 32%. So when the flop comes up with pretty high cards in it, like a king or an ace or something, right? And someone maybe raised before the flop, you may think that they probably have a king or an ace. So operate under the assumption that they did, or at least that you should be aware that they may have one of these high cards, especially if they come up. So you made a pair, cool. But if it's not like top pair, you might not be in good position. Now, if you've got two cards in your hand and you flopped what's called an open-ended straight, so you have something like 6, 7, 8, 9. You need a 10 or a 5 to finish your straight out. That's 8 what we call outs. And an out, again, from the first video, is a card that if it comes up, you assume you have won, right? You assume that the straight is good enough to win. So you have 8 outs to beat the other player. You have a 31% chance of making that on the turn or the river. So what does that mean? That means that if there's 500 in the pot already, right? Whoa! Oh, there's chips going everywhere. Okay, so there's 500 in the pot already, and your opponent bets out 200, right? That makes it a total of 700 in the pot, and if you've got 1 to 3 odds, you only need, if it's going to cost you 200, you only need to be able to win 600 to make it an even bet. More than that would be good. And so since there's 7 in, you actually do have what are called pot odds to call for the turn, and then probably call again for the river to go for the straight. Now, the most common situation is not necessarily the open-ended straight draw. That's misleading to some people because it seems like, oh, hitting a straight, that seems like really unlikely. But a lot of people will have what they call the flush draw. So 3 cards will come up and 2 of them are diamonds. So say this player is sitting over here with 2 more diamonds, the king 5 of diamonds, and they say, I've got 2 diamonds on the board. What are my chances of making it? So it's 19% on the turn to make it, and then 19.5% on the river. So not all that great, but of those 2, it's probably a little over 30, 33, 34% to make the flush by the river. So again, you get pot odds to call. Now let's say the card went to the turn, right? And this guy bets out 300. There would have to be, so for you to call the 300, and you know it's a 19.5%, let's round it up to 20, 1 and 5. There'd have to be at least 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, right? There'd have to be at least 15 available, like 1,500 available for you to throw at another 300 at it, because the chances of you hitting the diamond on the last one are that much. When you don't hit it, that's very frustrating, right? It's like, oh, I didn't hit it. But if you keep playing the odds, you will eventually hit it. And the time you do hit it, you will get paid off. So another good example, pocket pairs. Pocket pairs are pretty common. 1 in 16 hands you get is going to be some sort of pocket pair. This guy's got jacks. A pocket pair's chance of hitting the flop, where you make the third in the thing, which is an extremely powerful hand, is only 7.5 to 1. So maybe say 8 to 1, right? So every 8 times you call the flop, call them before the flop to see it, you're going to miss. This is why a lot of times, unless I've got 10s or better, I'm probably not raising pre-flop with a pair, because the chances of an overcard coming and making a pair for my opponent is really high. But I will almost always limp if I can, and limp means you've called the minimum. So if I've got pair of 6s, pair of 7s, whatever, I'll limp, right? Because if they're going to let me see the pot for cheap, especially if other limpers have come in, I've got a 1 in 8 chance of hitting. If I don't hit, fold it, be done with it. If I do hit though, wow, that is a huge hand, because a lot of people aren't going to put you on something like that. If I see this flop here, if someone limped in with 4-4, there's no way I'm expecting them to have 4-4. So you can really lure people in. However, this is a really scary flop for Jack-Jack. Jack-Jack goes, oh boy, I hit my Jack-Jack-Jack. And then they go, oh, there are 3 diamonds on the board. Or sorry, there are 2 diamonds on the board. If my opponent has 2 diamonds, I don't want to make it easy for him to draw to it. So you actually want to not give your opponent pot odds. So if there were 500, 1,000 in the pot, whoever is over here, you've hit Jack-Jack-Jack, you don't want your opponent drawing. As tempting as it is with Jack-Jack-Jack to try to suck some money in, you probably want to bet high enough that doesn't give this guy odds. Now, he might be a noob and he might go, ooh, I almost got the flush. I'm going to pay to see it. But if you make him pay to see it, at least he's paying to see it. You're putting him at a disadvantage. So that's really all there is to it. You do have to understand some of the odds and knowing the ones off the top of the head. 1 in 8 to hit a set, about 32 to 34% of hitting an open-ended straight draw or a flush draw. And then, of course, an inside straight draw is half of what it would be to get an open-ended straight draw. So you're down to like 16% of hitting it. That's really not giving you odds to go on in the hand almost at all. So you want to play when you have the odds in your favor. You want to make the opponent so they don't have the odds in your favor. And in the previous video, I did some poor math and said that a pocket pair of 10-10 should go on at 23 to 1 odds of hitting it on the next card, and that was false in the example. But the concept still holds true that if you're constantly doing the math and you're constantly putting your money in when it is good to do so, it is upsetting. So if this guy ends up folding, right? If this guy bets out and this guy folds, right? I'm going to throw 1,000 chips at a 1,000 chip pot, not give him odds to draw, and then it comes up, and then it comes up, and then it comes up, and then it comes up. That's what I meant to do. This guy's gonna, in his head, he's gonna be like, oh, I should have called. But that's not the correct way to think about it. He made the correct mathematical decision, which in the long term will get you to be a winner. Now, of course, if you're a beginner, you love gambling, and there is nothing better. There is no better feeling than throwing your money in and having the diamond hit, and you go, ooh, yeah, I hit my card. I'm a gambler, and I'm gonna take a bunch of money down. And it does happen, of course, and it will happen against you as well. But keep the odds in mind, and you'll be a little bit better off in the long term. Thanks for listening to Nick Ryder Tips.